Thanks for listening now to the Public Square from the American Policy Roundtable. I'm Wayne Shepard, and the team is here today. Alan C. Duncan, Jeff Sanders, Melanie Elsey, Rob Wolgate, and Dave Zanotti. And let's pick up on our conversation and talk more about the New York Times article, Planned Parenthood in Crisis. There's a lot more that needs to be said, Dave.
There is, Wayne. We were just talking about this. This is probably about a 15-hour college course.
Wow.
And the New York Times article would basically be the summary of how you'd build the syllabus. Because about every 2 sentences, they're laying out another plank as to how the abortion industry works, or how it's dysfunctional, or how Planned Parenthood works, or how they set their priorities. It's not a super long article, but it is one of the most revealing exposés on Planned Parenthood that I've ever seen from a mainstream American media source. Now, we're all a little puzzled by the motivation behind this, and I'm sure that will unfold, but the content is so significant that we want to keep talking about it. So, Again, to be fair to everybody,
Life.aproundtable.org will take you and allow you to get to Abortion in America, the publication.
What will we do without Rob, huh?
We released in 2024. Well, as Dave's talking about this expose, I've pulled up what he's written that will be added to Abortion in America at life.aproundtable.org. And just, you mentioned in there, DZ, how this New York Times piece, they claim to have talked to over 50 former and current executives or employees of Planned Parenthood. I mean, the amount of time that went into this article and the interviews that were done, had to be months and months, if not a year's worth of work to go after them in this fashion. There was a lot of effort put into this behind the scene. This wasn't done haphazardly.
It does bring up the question as to where was this information just several months ago when there were multiple ballot issues facing the states about expanding abortion.
Oh, can you imagine? Yeah.
Can you imagine how this information, which surely had to be in process, and so again, we can't impugn or reveal. We don't know the mind of the New York Times. We're just saying how different might the world have looked on several of those. Now, it's interesting even as it was without this article, for the first time, the abortion industry faced 3 defeats in that last November election on state ballot issues. So they had been undefeated. So it's the first time they basically got knocked backwards. And some of them are still reeling from that reality. But this article, think about this article, the potential of this article to be distributed widely for people to understand. And why is that important? Because abortion is such a secretive world.
Yeah.
Let's face it, nobody gets up in the morning saying they want to talk about this subject.
Before we go any further, I know we have some people listening who have not heard the previous discussions on this. And how do I get to read this article? It is behind a paywall at the New York Times. So unless it's an article gifted to you by a subscriber, or you may search for it online, and maybe somebody has received permission to repeat it, but it's out there, and we should be able to find it somewhere, Dave.
We're going to have to do some digging. And if you're unsuccessful, what I would suggest you do is to visit life.aproundtable.org, get a copy of Abortion in America. It's free download. And you'll see that we have done a critique of the article carefully. We're not putting words in the New York Times mouth, nor are we reprinting the article. We understand that can only be done with permission. We're not asking for permission. They can tell their own story. But we are commenting under our rights on free speech. We are commenting on what it is that they said. You can get a very strong sense and understanding of what that article was all about if you visit us.
The other thing about this article is I'm not sure any of us had it on our bingo card for 2025. So you also wonder, is this line 1 of what the New York Times is planning to do? Like, what's coming down the rest of the year? Is this the beginning of something? What was the motivation of the article? I know we don't know that, but that's what I'm thinking of.
Well, that's a good point. It seems like we're in an era of uncovering right now. That seems like that could be a theme for 2025, uncovering things. And so I'm hopeful that we learn the truth about a lot of things this year.
But what this article is, the approach of this article is not a philosophical discussion on whether abortions should take place or not.
Correct.
The focus of this article is the practice of the medical community in the abortion arena and the risk that people take when they walk into an abortion clinic in real terms.
I have a question. The federal support that Planned Parenthood receives, does it get filtered through HHS?
Yes.
That's a good question. Now that we know Bobby Kennedy's in charge.
Yeah, it would have to, Melanie, because the federal support, yes. And it may also be coming from other places, because this is the challenge, Wayne. When it comes to federal and state grants, Planned Parenthood has carefully constructed their service provision to match up with zones where funding is available. And so funding is available at the county level, at the state level, the federal level for many different pieces and parts. Now, some of the funding that now we talk about Planned Parenthood, national and states, depending on how creative they are in what products they're providing or educational programs that they might be doing, they might be getting money from state, federal, and county sources all at the same time going into different pots.
You probably know what I'm hinting at. Will it fall under any DOJ review?
There's no doubt that where there is a straight funding from the state, whether it's through the Department of Education, Health and Human Services, Melanie, I'm not sure what other departments would, but certainly they would come under DOJ review. They could.
Well, the funding streams, just for clarification, the funding streams is not just a straight fed dollar to an abortion clinic. It filters through health services for the Indian reservations, for TRICARE, for the military. So the specific answer to your question is wherever there's an appropriation bill, there's a potential for funding in each of these areas. A lot of it will come through HHS. So it can be on DOJ's radar in terms of looking at the misuse of those dollars as intended.
That's an excellent question and an excellent, thank you, Melanie. The point is, if you wanted to contact DOJ and say, would you look into Planned Parenthood? You wouldn't be wrong. They'd have plenty to look at. Now, you might also need congressional help because it may be over DOJ's head, believe it or not, because there are so many ways that the federal dollars. But I'll tell you another thing. If you talk to your governor and your state representatives, your state senators, and ask you, how are we using funds in our state in regards to the state appropriations, regards to Planned Parenthood? Everything should be open for review. And I have a question.
Okay.
I'm going to read you the headline. I'm going to ask you how you would describe it. Botched care and tired staff. Planned Parenthood in crisis.
I would describe that. I would describe that as a hit piece from Veritas Media from 5 years ago. That's what I would think. First thing, I would say, there's what's his name? Eric O'Keefe? James O'Keefe. And I like James O'Keefe, by the way, just for the record, but I would say, there he is going after him.
I actually think it's a veiled attempt to say we need more money. Their employees are underpaid at the bottom of the pyramid. The CEOs at the top of the pyramid are averaging more than $317,000 a year in salary.
That's why I just don't know if I agree with it. I mean, it might be that, but if it's that, they did a terrible job in this piece, because all I see is them describing a rampantly corrupt organization that would be a money pit. Well, so, and who in the federal government are they asking more money from? They know that the federal government's in the midst of a massive slashing of federal things.
But as they're describing the monies that they're receiving, they're saying this affiliate over here is going to be $800 million short. It's almost like, thank you for what you're doing, but we need more to ensure health and safety at the clinic level.
And when people think about abortion, they think Planned Parenthood. So if you're reading this article and you are pro-abortion, you have that feeling that the only way to fix it is to make sure these folks get more money. Here's the flaws. They're not going to take their money and give it to someone else that's providing those abortion resources. You're going to give to Planned Parenthood. I also thought, again, and this could create another expose article, I also thought it was interesting. They talked about Minnesota. There was a nurse that said she was fired for attempting to unionize in Minnesota. And I thought, wow, that was interesting that the reporter put that in there, because you could dig a little deeper and go a lot of different places for that. I think it tried to show a way where they could drum up support to show that Planned Parenthood isn't delivering on the leftist promises they are making, so they better get some fixes in to make that happen.
I don't think it's an appeal for money. I'm more conspiratorial than most. DOJ is going to be investigating Medicaid fraud. They're going to be investigating this stuff.
But I think it's private dollars, Jeff, not just government dollars.
Okay.
I think this is an appeal to the Warren Buffetts of the world to say, hey, you've got billions.
up,
We need
huh?
a few $100 million.
Yeah.
So once again, botched care and tired staff, Planned Parenthood in crisis. Wayne, you've got more time in media than the rest of us. All right. And what does that headline sound like to you?
Well, it was surprising. I'll admit, I didn't see it until you started passing it around. So I was already, ready to view it in that light. But yeah, I was surprised to see that.
I would ask, does anyone see it as if I see those words, does that sound like an indictment to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I said earlier they had me at botched.
Yeah.
Yes, because you think botched abortion, and then crisis, you think crisis pregnancy. They're using these buzzwords that are typically used the other way around.
Well, crisis implies that they need rescued.
Yes.
And
yes,
who
but it
needs
makes one think
rescued?
of a crisis pregnancy as well.
Yeah. This is really white hot language, and this is an article this article could be a watershed in this entire debate. Now, I know that eventually the folks who are in favor of Planned Parenthood are going to listen to every word that we've done here on the public square, and that's fine. Welcome. We welcome you. We obviously have a serious difference of opinion in regards to the health of mothers and the vibrancy of human life in our culture and the protection of the unborn. We get that. But we respect all of your rights to do under the law what you have your rights to do in regards to free speech and all of the other permutations of this debate. We disagree. We're not hysterical. We disagree. And we're concerned. We are concerned about the diminishment of life in our culture altogether. So this is the context of this debate. Planned Parenthood is under indictment, not by us. It's by the New York Times. How does that happen?
Well, to review this conversation and others that have preceded it on this topic, please visit us at thepublicsquare.com. But don't go anywhere, because we've got more to talk about next. Stay with us.
We will be right back for more on The Public Square. There are people and organizations like Americans United for the Separation of Church and State that actually believe that reading of the Declaration of Independence in public schools is somehow un-American. How did America ever come to this? If you're tired of standing on the sidelines while others rewrite the Declaration and the Constitution, please join us in spreading the light of liberty across the land. To learn how to contribute to the work of the American Policy Roundtable, please call us today at 800-522-VOTE. Don't just get mad, make a difference. Call us today, 1-800-522-VOTE.
Back to the conversation on the Public Square today about the New York Times article regarding Planned Parenthood. Dave has mentioned the article a couple of times here today, and I was just looking for the exact title. It's Botched Care and Tired Staff.
So, an indictment from the New York Times against the entire operation of Planned Parenthood. In the midst of that, they had to explain the operation of Planned Parenthood. Does it, after having read it multiple times and researched it as a staff, here's my question. Were you surprised at all how complicated their operation is?
Yeah. I did not know that it was a series of fiefdoms across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people would call it franchise. They actually, in the article, they use the word fief, straight out of medieval history.
Did they use it in this article, or was that Life Action that used it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe it was Life Action. My apologies.
officially they were called affiliates.
Yeah. Rob, you spent a lot of time with me in the management of nonprofits. I mean, this is what we do. Were you surprised at how many layers this thing runs?
I was there, and there's a lot of disarray to it. And when you hear terms such as conveyor belt that are used in the article, that's one that like makes you sit up, especially when you're talking about what they would call themselves a medical facility. When you're talking about people being in wrong rooms or people going through places and just being rushed through their appointment, yeah, the complexity of it all is something that jumps out to you when you read the article.
Well, and something that jumped out to me was the continued talk about poor morale among the employees. And I just couldn't help but think as I was reading this piece, perhaps, I mean, not surprisingly, but not unsurprisingly, but perhaps killing children in their mother's womb takes a toll. It takes a toll on yourself. Yeah, is not a good morale boost, is not a good place to work. Are we shocked that these places are poorly run and terrible places to work? No, it's not surprising.
It's got to take a toll on your soul. It just has to. But Alan, when the article brought that out, it was all about they wanted to protect the mission. That stuck out to me as well. They wanted to protect the mission of the organization at personal sacrifice. Yeah.
Yes, the higher ups were, but the women who actually are just normal women working these low wage jobs, those are the ones that the toll is taking on them. So they're told to shut up and get back to work and pick up a part-time job to keep the mission going. But those are the ones that are coming out and saying this is brutal, grueling stuff.
You know, there is a significant amount of research done on that through the work of Abby Johnson. And we've talked about this in multiple times before here on the broadcast. We've interviewed Abby. She's a friend, and her testimony and her story is genuine. Check her out, Abby Johnson, and you'll see that she is in constant work to try to help these women escape this kind of employment and find a better way of living life. Rob?
Well, and as I read the New York Times article and the part where it talked about sewage coming up from a backed up toilet and seeping into a room, and you just have those visuals, Gosnell immediately popped into my mind. We think about the horrific conditions that were happening in Philadelphia years ago. And Dr. Kermit Gosnell, who there were reports of what was going on, it really hadn't been investigated. And then when they finally took a dive in to what was happening, it was horrific. And I still think that those images of what happened in that poor Philadelphia neighborhood should be brought up to remind us so history isn't repeated.
And he's sitting in prison for his actions in that clinic. And, just the amount of time it took to expose the horrific conditions, the malpractice activities of this person, the time it took for the health department to actually get in there and respond was incredibly horrifying.
Yeah.
Dave, you mentioned Abby Johnson.
Yes.
She runs this organization. Their website is abortionworker.com. It says on their site, we help people in the abortion industry leave their jobs and rediscover the peace and joy they've been missing. So I think you're right to bring her up. A lot of these people mentioned in this article would do well to go to abortionworker.com.
Yeah. Can I turn the attention back to what you've written, Dave? Thank you for doing this. It really enlightens me as I compare both what the New York Times wrote and then read your analysis. It really helps a great deal. And your article is freely available at our website, so you can easily obtain that and look at that.
And we're going to put it everywhere, but particularly we're going to attach it to the booklet that we published in 2024 that we are continually updating each and every time we have an opportunity.
Yeah. So give me a little insight, though. When you read the article in New York Times, did you instantly know, hey, I've got to respond to this? I've got to put together a reaction to this?
I was shocked because all of us have been lifetime in the study of this subject. I can't remember another time where the New York Times or any of the other major progressive American media sources have laid an indictment against Planned Parenthood. I've never seen it. So this is a watershed document. This is different. Again, you can go off the rabbit trail of the motivation for a long time, and that's tempting. But one of the things that we discovered in working through these state ballot issues that have been with us and are still going to be with us, and state laws and the whole change since Roe has fallen, is that the structures of information are dated. People don't know the reality of what's happening in abortion right now. One of the things this Times article did was to explain to us that the way that Planned Parenthood built their organization and built out their organization over the last 50 years was completely top-heavy in regards to paying large dollars out and to their staff in regards to the rhetoric and the political debate and the television education and all the things that they do. But when it came to actually providing services, they structurally have been deficient. Now, why this wasn't exposed during the period of Roe, when in fact there were no laws restricting those clinics, but what the tiny little amendments along the side could do, but you couldn't stop abortion on demand for all 9 months through, in the United States, except very, very rare situations. They had what they wanted. They had Roe, and for 50 years, and no one looked to see how are the services being provided. Now suddenly they don't have Roe, and they can't handle the demand at the bottom. Well, there should have been less abortions, but there's not. There's more abortions. So in essence, their plans are not working. Their structure is dysfunctional, and it doesn't look like there's anything that's going to change that.
Well, this is more of a general comment, but when you write an article like you've written at life.aproundtable.org in summarizing the New York Times article, it not only applies to this case, but it helps us think critically about all the other articles that we read in the media all the time. It helps us process, is what I'm saying. So thank you for doing that.
Well, and thank you, Wayne. And this is, we're not in the outrage business. Because to be honest with you, it doesn't surprise us that Planned Parenthood does what they do. And we're not ignorant of it. We've known their three-part structure. We know their situation. We know they're top-heavy. We know all this stuff. But you see, when we say it, then we're cranks because we're pro-life trying to fight against the virtue of the abortion community. When the New York Times says it, it's like, well,
they're
look at
well-paid
that.
cranks.
Yes, well-paid cranks, right.
Yeah, doggone.
Yeah, we should say thank you to Katie Benner, the one who wrote this piece. So we appreciate her doing it.
Should we send this broadcast to her? That would be
maybe
good.
we should.
Yeah,
maybe we should.
And she is more than welcome on this program. And we don't. And I think this is important. This is an important point right here as we close out this time together. We don't expect anyone to read this article and change their mind. We don't expect anybody to listen to this program and change their mind. We're not expecting conversions in regards to total worldview philosophies. What we're saying is this is happening in our neighborhoods. This is happening to our neighbors. Someone has blown the whistle. It appears that there's real harm here. Our question is, what is our obligation in regards to loving our neighbor? Therefore, anyone who disagrees with us is welcome to come on if they have a defense. These aren't charges we've made. These are indictments from the New York Times.
We've got about 90 seconds left, and on a previous program, we talked about our response. Can we review that real quickly? How do we respond?
Yes. Pray again. Get every point of information you can on all of this, and then send it to everyone you know who cares about life, and in particular, regardless of where your state lawmakers and your federal members of Congress are, send them this article and ask them if they've read it and ask them to respond to you. And you can get those contacts at aproundtable.org. Find my elected officials. You'll find them right there. Talk to everybody you know, because if enough of us keep talking about this, there's a possibility that some people who genuinely are going to have an opportunity in this to make an impact are going to hear about it.
And we can live out Romans 12:21. Be not overcome by evil, but overcome evil by doing good. I think that's the call that's put on all of us. And I think as we talk about this and we fight for life. We're reminded of that daily.
You're right, Rob. The fight isn't just about laws, and it isn't just about votes. The fight is about how we live our lives every day.
Thank you, team. Again, all the programs in this series, you might want to go back and listen to them again to get the information down. It's thepublicsquare.com. That's the website where you can hear the archived version of this program or use a smartphone app as well. For the information about abortion in America, that report that we published, it's available at life.aproundtable.org, as is the article that Dave wrote summarizing the New York Times article. It's all at life.aproundtable.org. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, team. See you next time on The Public Square.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.